Hello everyone, welcome to video 3 of the Maverick Sculpting clay tests. Forgot to mention in the second video, but I did mention in the first, just to be clear, this is a sort of sponsored video. She did send me some of the Maverick clay in exchange for some YouTube video demos and reviews. My opinion is still honest, experiment, don't lie, so yeah, so that doesn't really affect things, but it's best to disclose that information anyway. So in this video we're going to be testing sculpting a mane and tail with it, see if there's any sort of cracking or ill effects or anything, because we already know that there's shrinkage, but so far everything's okay. So now we're wetting this little dude's tail and we'll see how this adheres. I have a little bit of baking soda and crazy glue on the wire so it doesn't slide around. It seems to be sticking on there pretty nice. Working with this soft stuff is going to be taking some getting used to. Especially if you're like me and you tend to squish absolutely everything you do. Okay, so we have our first sculpted thing, sort of, with it. This little full tail. Quite a few things. There is quite a learning curve to this. It's so soft. Like, you can't even touch it and keep detail there because it just gets lost. And then when you want to shape something with some water, it just takes everything. It just goes away. So it's very difficult to get used to, I think. That might just be a learning curve type thing and a preference. What I'm not liking is those little fibers I was talking about in there. They're starting to become a little bit of a problem in this scale. They are kind of large with this scale, and it kind of just grabs onto things, and you can't kind of get that little detail at the edges of things. So I don't know how that's going to pan out as far as doing anything smaller than this. And you know me, I usually do work smaller than this. Even if I were to do some details on this guy, I don't know how that would go. Like a little eyeball or something, because those fibers tend to drag whatever it is around at the edges there. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not completely happy with this tail. It's just not doing what I want it to do. You know, you can't just push on one area. It kind of pushes the whole thing because it's so soft. I also don't like, it does not dry evenly. So the edges start to dry before the thicker parts, and then it's hard to kind of like re-detail those edges, even though, you know, even though you can kind of like re-wet it and rework with it, it's harder to do that because the edges are drier and the edges are more fragile, and like it just doesn't work. So because I put very lightly, you know, watered it down to smooth it out, to smooth those fibers out, and like I lost pretty much all my detail. So I mean, the smoothing, yeah, it's great for smoothing, but if you see like how I'm trying to like do this little detail here, it's pushing the whole thing, and the whole thing is moving. I can't put my finger under it to support it because all of this will just disappear. Like in epoxy, it's a little bit firmer, so I can have a light touch under it while I do that. But here, I can't even lightly touch this. And even when you sculpt with it, you have to be incredibly light-handed. Otherwise, it's just not gonna, break, you know, push it where you don't want it to go. It's basically moving the whole thing. So I think this kind of needs a structure under it to work. So I'm interested to see how it's going to be on this guy where he's got the structure there. But just from the wire, it's kind of difficult to work with itself. And especially those fibers. I don't know if you can see the fibers at the ends. There's one sticking out here, a couple out here. It's just, they kind of grab and don't do anything. So I don't know. It's easy to get the detail in there, but it's hard to keep it there, I think is what I'm trying to say. It's just you can't touch it. It's so soft. It might be better for carving later. Like putting your basic structure on and carving, kind of like how Amazing Sculpt is, where it's very sticky and very difficult and saggy, so it's very difficult to like sculpt with it. It's more about carving and stuff. You can see how just rough the edges are because of all those fibers, and I'm not digging that because I can't really take the brush and smooth that out because, yeah, actually, can you even see? I'm trying to like get this little piece under here to go down, and it just keeps sticking out with the fiber. Yeah, so I can't even like smooth it down with the brush because it'll just take all the detail away and smush in the edges. I don't want flat edges. I want, see, and now this edge, come back into focus. This edge here, I want to kind of push this in, but the edge is dry, and see, it kind of just pushes like that instead of letting me give a notch in there. Epoxy, even if it was firm, the whole thing would be firm. And of course, my camera cut out as I was saying something important. As I was saying, yeah, the epoxy dries evenly, so if I wanted to put a, you know, notch there, I could just push on that and a notch would go in. But here the edges are dry, so when I try and push that notch, the whole dried edge kind of comes up and in, up and inward. So yeah, I don't know how much I really like that, and the fibers just kind of drag around and kind of pull with the tools, and it kind of moves things where they don't want to go because you have a fiber in there, kind of like a paintbrush bristle that's going in the wrong direction when you're painting. But anyway, let's move on to the mane on this little guy. It's just going to be a simple little Foley type mane. So we got to wet it first so it sticks. And here we go. Alright, I think we will stop there for the mane. That went a little bit easier. It's still not quite as nice as I'd like, but it did go better than the tail. However, I'm not digging these fibers in here, man. They're really like messing with me. It's like I have hair in it, trying to pull that hair out. It really is messing with where I want things to go at this scale. It may not do it for larger scales because they're smaller fibers, so it might not affect that as much, but at this scale, it's kind of affecting the way it's working. So I don't know what the dealio is with those, but it's very weird. Also, I don't like the way it dries. Like I said, all the edges are drying up first, so it's just being very, very difficult. It's really reminding me of like pizza dough. When you're making pizzas for a while and you have like the dough starts to dry out and it's drying out on the edges, and it's like pizza dough with cat hair in it. But I'm still mixed on it, the way I feel about it. So we're gonna let this dry up and see if it cracks or whatever, and what happens. And be back with that test later. And we should move on to the next one. Alright, we got the main on. That actually went a lot quicker than I thought. I'm either getting used to it, or what I think is that the armature really helps a lot with this stuff, because you can't touch it. If you touch it, you lose pretty much everything because it's so soft. But having a flat armature underneath actually worked really well. Because it's such a light touch, it was more like drawing than sculpting. So I kind of enjoyed that, actually, for this. And that was probably the fastest main I've ever done. I mean, it could use a little more, you know, finesse and, you know, detail. But it's easy to get the detail in there with the soft material, because I could just draw it in there with this, and I'm not worrying about little crumblies. like you get with epoxy sometimes. So that's actually pretty nice. I really did enjoy doing the mane on here with this. However, again, those fibers are proving a big nuisance. I went to pull off some extra that I didn't want on there before, and it pulls off more than you want because the fibers like are intertwined, so it like pulls more than you really want off. So that is kind of rough. Working with the little one was harder because it was even a smaller scale, but they were still getting in the way a little bit here. You can even still see them sticking off the edges as I finished the mane here. Could use a little blobby right there. It's easy to manipulate where you want it to go because it pushes so easy. So it's a different way of doing it. It doesn't work so well without the structure there because you can't touch it. You don't have much control over it. Here, I felt this was more like drawing on a canvas or something, as opposed to, or drawing in a sketchbook, as opposed to like actually sculpting, because I already had the armature there and just kind of laid the clay on top of it, and I was able to get a nice thin layer on there too, so that was nice. So I did enjoy that. Let's move on to the tail and see how that goes. Alright, I think I'll call it there on the tail so I don't fiddle too much. Again, it was easier than the other one with just the wire because it has like an armature underneath, but it wasn't as easy as doing the mane. The mane I actually had some wire mesh under the painter's tape, which made it stiffer so it didn't move as much, but on the tail, getting towards the back part here, it would be a little flimsy, so I would have to kind of carefully have a light touch, and I couldn't really touch the other side, so I would suggest a really strong armature behind these if you want to sculpt something with it. Again, these fibers do prove troublesome when you're doing stuff. Yeah, so far I like how it works on the armature a lot better. It made it go pretty smoothly. I mean, this was a pretty quick mane and tail considering epoxy does usually take me longer than that. I have more control with the epoxy, but this was a really quick, it's quick like blocking out type thing with some detail. I think this would be good for putting detail on top of something, hence the sturdy armature underneath. So like if you have like a really thin, like if you use epoxy for like the blocking out of like mane and tail, very thin pieces, sculpting with this on top of it will probably give you some really nice fine details, so that's pretty nice. So we're going to let these sit, see if we have any sort of shrinking or cracking or whatever, and yeah. Alright, it's been about 2 days for this little dude here. It cures. Definitely pretty hard. Sorry, I keep getting too close to the camera. It's definitely pretty hard, and it's not like cracking right away if I just do that. That's a lot sturdier than I thought it would be. And the detail looks pretty nice in it. Not too much distortion, I don't think, either, which is quite nice. Let's see how the attaching areas are. There's this teensy bit of cracking right there, separating from the plastic, but I mean, that's not bad. I don't see any major cracks, just that little bit on this side coming, raising off the mane there, but the tail looks okay. And yeah, so better than I expected, to be honest. Pretty good. So these fibers are also still sticking out, but maybe those can sand off later. So overall, it looks good to me. I don't notice any shrinking because there's no direct comparison. And if it did shrink, if anything, it made the detail more intense, which is kind of cool, because I'm actually happier with it today than when it was freshly done. So I wonder if, you know, the shrinkage kind of just like makes the detail more, you know, indented. But so yeah, I don't see any cracking. I really thought that it was going to be cracked all along here, and it's not. It's just one little spot right there. And that is about it. Huh. Would you look at that? So far so good on that. That's pretty nice. Let's check the other one. Okay, we are back. This is the next morning. And here it is. It is hard. It is cured up. Let's see. Can't really move it too much. So it cured up pretty strong. Same with the mane. The mane is pretty strong too. And let's see, do we have any cracking or anything? Oh, yeah, a little. Yeah, the bottom under here where it's thin. Bottom under here where it's thin and blends into like the butt area, that has lifted. This is also, yeah, here you can see right there. There it goes. So it doesn't attach, yeah, all that strongly. It kind of does come right off on the rubbery one here. So that one area wasn't roughed up, so that could be why it's popping off. But I do feel epoxy probably would have stepped there, but we don't know for sure. I mean, this part was, yeah, this part was roughed up, and it's also, I don't know if you could see it, this part here is moving. So that didn't stay attached. The main's pretty good, but again, remember that had the wire mesh in it too. Mixed feelings about that. I'm just gonna sand it and see how easy that goes. So, I mean, there it is at the point where it actually connects to the wire area. And even that was definitely roughed up in there because I had to chop it off. So, and that does kind of come right off. So that did not go well on that end. Let me check this guy again. No, this one's not. This one, well. Yeah, I kind of, if I push that a little bit, you can see it coming up. But it doesn't have as much give as this one has, because this is a rubbery plastic. It's also a longer tail, so I honestly don't think epoxy would have done that. You may have gotten a little crack, but it wouldn't have just come right off easily. But I mean, overall, pretty good. A lot better than I thought it would be. And it's a lot sturdier than I thought it would be. And actually the shrinkage, I see it on this one too, the shrinkage actually works in its benefit a little bit, because it almost deepens the detail. So that's kind of cool actually. But I just don't know about the bonding of it. The bonding of it is not making me feel too happy inside, but overall it's kind of cool. It's very interesting still, and the results on this did come out a lot better than I thought it would, so bonus there. So yeah, I dig. So that's that. Let's do a quick little domino test here to see if anything breaks. Oh no. Don't think so. Don't think so. Shall we drop it on the floor too and see what happens? Alright, so this is probably about 2.5 feet, 2 feet, 2.5 feet. I'm going to be dropping it from. Sorry about my feet. Did it even hit anything? I don't even think that even hit anything, so let's try that again. And let's drop this dude. Oh no! Let's see how these held up. Well, the tail tip broke, but I mean that was a pretty rough fall there. A little tail tip there. Didn't see anything else, so that's pretty good. The tail did crack off a little more, but it didn't come off. I don't see anything else broken there. Let's drop him on his tail. Dropped him on his tail, and it did kind of flatten the end there. It doesn't really like break. It more like tears, kind of like paper, which is kind of weird. Maybe there's paper in it. Maybe it's like just a paper clay. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, not too shabby. Oh, that's, by the way, under those tiles is cement, so that's a pretty tough floor. The only damage we got was the tail breaking off that and the end of the tail breaking off that. So, cool beans. Not too shabberoony. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time. Bye.